Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul show. We're on our way to Washington, DC, or well, the All Blacks are anyway. In fact, they're already there, I think, as they prepare for their opening game of their tour or the end of year tour against the USA, which, let's be honest, should be a comfortable win for them. But we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the Wallabies opening game of their end of year tour, which is up against Japan as well. And then also the sad news of Sean Wainui, and we'll probably also touch on Moana Pasifika and their signings. I'm Paul, and I'll be your host this evening here on the DrivingMaul show. And joining me, I've first up got Boa. How you doing, sir?
Well, thanks, and kia ora, everyone. Yeah, look, a bit of a somber note to start the week, really, with the passing of the brilliant, very young Sean Wainui. I have to say I was quite stunned when I heard the news, and it took a few minutes before it sank in. So really sad news, and it's really been felt right across the rugby community, not just here in Aotearoa, but right around the world. And of course, yeah, as you said, quite a few things happening in the background as well. But lovely to be here. I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone is safe, and absolute pleasure to be on the show as always, Paul.
Thank you very much, Bo. And yes, we'll get into that. But first, before we do get into talking about things, I'll bring in Stephen. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Paul. Always great to be on the TDM, and just want to echo what Boa has Boa has actually started the show. Yeah, very, very sad occasion for the rugby community.
Absolutely. And Sean Wainui, a player who always played with a smile on his face and looks to be enjoying the game, which is how we like to see it. Leaves behind, unfortunately, a young family as well, who will obviously now be without a dad, which is very sad. And a player who I hadn't realised had been down at the Crusaders initially, but helped them with the setup of their hacker down there. And as a player who had great mana in the community, and I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, folks, but you get what I mean. It was a player of great character, and who wore his culture on his sleeve and showed it off to the best possible way as well. Any particular sort of memories or thoughts you guys would like to share about Sean Wainui?
Yeah, listen. It'd be remiss of us to sort of mention how this talented youngster started his career. Now he's a product of. Unbelievably, he was born in a place called Whatatutu, which is pretty much down near the Kaimai Ranges, I think, or down in the Bay of Plenty. So started off as a young fella, but he also attended Mount Albert Grammar School, and Takapuna Grammar was, not really known as a rugby school. If you think of the North Harbour secondary schools, and he was spotted from there as a teenager, and in fact picked up by Colin Cooper and taken down to Taranaki as a youngster. Played 53 games for Taranaki between 2014 and 2020, but in 2016 he was picked up by the Crusaders, played 9 games for the Crusaders, and of course moved to the Chiefs. It almost seemed like he was at peace, should I say, just probably a province with that pretty much emphasised everything tikanga Māori, and played 44 games for the Chiefs. And of course this year we saw him transfer to the Bay of Plenty Steamers, and of course he's one of these kids that's really impressionable, really, really likeable, real athlete as well, Paul. So yeah, it's just like times like this, just no words. You really don't know what to say. And of course he leaves behind a couple of young babies and a wife, and of course I've got to know Sean through his dad, who's heavily involved in the Wakahama community. He has a couple of other siblings, 2 other brothers, and a sister, all paddlers as well. And in fact, Luke, I think, played senior rugby for Takapuna over the shore as well. So yeah, it's a little bit close to home, if you know what I mean, guys. And as Bar will probably reference me, the rugby union, the New Zealand Rugby Union community is not that big when you think about it at the end of the day.
And yeah, just before Belkin, Dr. Wright says, that he hadn't realised how young he was. And yes, that's because at the age of 18 was selected for the Maori All Blacks. I mean, even though he's only 25, he's been around for like 7 years at practically international level, which is amazing. But But yeah, and Boa, you any sort of thoughts or memories?
Yeah, well, two really vivid thoughts was when actually he was playing for Takapuna Grammar, and as rightly Steve mentioned, Takapuna Grammar not necessarily known for rugby, and he was the man. He was the captain of the first 15, a real talent, and he had wheels to burn. And of course, he was a member of the Junior All Blacks, which won the world title, beating the English juniors. I think it's back in 2016.
Wow.
That team had an assortment of stars who've now graduated to the senior ranks, and again, he was a very key instrumental player. And of course, he was one of those guys who's very laid back, and nothing seemed to phase him, or even under absolute pressure and adversity. He was just cool, calm, and collected. And he did his job, which was score tries. And if you recall, last season he got 4 for the Chiefs in one particular game. I can't quite, or 5, I beg your pardon. And yeah, gentlemen, the reality is it hurts a lot to actually think that this kid has actually left us, because I think the best of him was yet to come. And I think that's the most difficult thing to digest. And just looking at, pretty much everyone who's connected to rugby in some form or shape, and fans on their social media walls, there were tributes to this young man, and fans from right across the world. So it's really made an impression of grief right across the rugby union community, right across the world. And our thoughts are with his young family. And it was very heartbreaking to see some of those videos with him and his young child, and to think that he's no longer there. So rest in peace, Sean Wainui. You certainly left a great impression in many a heart.
Absolutely. And you talk about his laid-back attitude, but one of the things that Neil Barnes talked about, who was one of his coaches at the Chiefs, was just how well prepared he was for every game. So whilst he may have come across as relaxed and laid back, there was a very good work ethic behind that as well. Just not a stressed and hyper work ethic, but a diligent work ethic, which is great to see.
Paul, I was about to say as well, the word mana sometimes gets bandied around quite easily, but boy, this kid. He oozed of mana, and I saw a perfect example. If I can quickly tell one story, Ross Wright had played his 100th game for the Northern Taniwha, and Sean took upon himself to basically do a mihi, and that's a speech to Ross Wright and the rest of the boys from the Northern Rugby Union, and beautifully fluent in Te Reo Māori. He got up, and you could have heard a pin drop. Such is the respect for this young man. At the time you kind of forget, wow, is this guy only in his mid-20s? Just absolutely outstanding. So listen, from the bottom of our hearts, me oku whakaro ki te whānau pani I tēnei wā pauri, he mihi tēnei ki Sean. Haere atu, haere rā, moe mai rā. Rest in peace. Just, yeah, sometimes even finding the right words to say is damn hard, guys. Just like I said, a little bit too close to home. And hey, wherever you are around the country, man, just give your whānau a bit of a hug at this stage, and stay safe, everybody.
Absolutely, folks. Remember, this is a reminder that to make the most of the day, and to say hi to those ones. Steve, look, we've got a global audience, so and I'll be honest, I'm one of those who don't understand what you just said. Then,
yep, just basically, our thoughts are with his family at this sad time, and basically on your journey. Travel well.
Thank you, Steve. Well, very well said. This weekend, there will obviously be tributes to that. We'll start off on Friday night with Otago versus Canterbury, and 2 provinces he wasn't involved with. But on Saturday, there'll be Taranaki versus Manawatu at 2:00. Obviously, he played for several years in Taranaki, so there'll be obviously some remembrance on that one. That's followed by Wellington versus Southland. That is a non-competition game this weekend. And then we have a Ranfurly Shield challenge between Hawke's Bay and Waikato at 7 p.m. on Saturday. So that's going to be clearly the game, or the end. A lot of us will be focusing on this weekend. On Sunday, Bay of Plenty will take on Northland in Tauranga Domain, and I will be at that game, folks. So look out for post-match interviews at that game, and also obviously with Sean Wenny being a current player, well, was part of the current squad at Bay of Plenty. I'd expect there'll be plenty of pieces of remembrance for him there at that game as well. There will also, I think, so we'll be due a pre-game to that one, which is raising money, I think, for cancer as well. So I won't be able to get to that one, but to the pre-game. But if you are in Tauranga, then look, things do kick off early at Tauranga Domain at around about sort of 11:30 or 12 o'clock for that pre-game. So do get on down there. It'll be a very moving day with also some very good rugby on show as well. And if you happen to be there and see me in my bucket hat, do say hello, folks, as well for that one.
Hey, Jensen, I think one of the most vivid memories of Sean Wainui is, with particularly fans, younger fans, is him scoring tries on that left wing, that trademark strike move by the Chiefs, off a line out, going to the middle, second man play, midfield. Sean Wainui holds his line 6 inches from the left hand touchline. D-Mac hits the line hard, sights through the two players right dead center, draws passes to Wainui. Wainui has 30 meters to cover, does so in next to no time, try time. Beautiful move, trademark Sean Wainui. And I think, I've shown that very same video cut in many coaching courses. And I think from a winger's point of view, a finisher's point of view, you can't ask for a better player to actually show coaches and players on how it is done. So signature move, Sean Wainui. And you will be missed.
And no doubt there will be some pre-game remembrance over in the USA when the All Blacks take on the USA Eagles over there. Boa, if you were Ian Foster, how would you be approaching this game? What kind of squad would you be putting out there?
Look, I think I'd go with a mixture of youth and experience. By youth, I mean lesser experience, so we can build some exposed form and get some minutes under the belt. But at the same time, it's important that we don't dilute the squad and we win some key moments in a very authoritarian fashion as the side which is looked up to in rugby union worldwide. Also, he's been speaking about the All Blacks being instinctive and responding and reacting a lot faster. I can fully appreciate what he's been trying to do, particularly in those in the last game against Springboks, where now we seem to be getting criticized quite heavily for losing the physicality, losing the battle up front. So I think those aspects need to be ironed out, and we need to put a dominant performance so that some of these players can actually pick up the form which they slightly got pushed sideways, and making sure that this talk about being instinctive and making the right decisions are made in a way that there are some true learnings happening. I mean, scoreline will probably blow out. I think it's in my view, it's a bit of a mismatch, this game against the USA Eagles. So it's important that the younger players actually kind of streamline to this game plan he's been talking about and make sure everything is seamless, so we cut down on our error rate. And keep in mind, this All Blacks group of players have been in camp for quite a long time, quite a significant amount of time. So they should really start to know each other. And once we get these combinations going, I think we can progressively build into the games ahead. So first up, obviously the Eagles, bit of cannon fodder, to be frank, massive mismatch. So I think the right amount of youth, or what I would call lesser experience, with some of the older heads. And keep in mind, we have some players who've been out of the squad, like Dane Coase coming in, wanting to get some minutes. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of squad he puts on the park. But in my opinion, I think it's got to be a mixture of lesser experience with some of the older heads.
Stephen, your thoughts on that one? Same approach?
Well, listen, Boa's on fire tonight. I think he summed a lot of stuff up. I probably want to say the only thing I can really add, he's probably going to have to give some guys who haven't had game time for a long time. I'm talking about Sam Cane and obviously Sam Whitelock, a little bit of game time just to basically get these guys back in the fold. Yeah, but I don't think they can go too wild and crazy and think to themselves, yeah, we've got some inexperienced guys. Like I can probably almost see somebody like Sam Whitelock partnering up with Josh Lord in the middle row, or even Josh Lord off the bench, and just ease them in quite nicely. Like you say, I think this is probably, with the greatest of respect to the Eagles, it's probably got a bit of a glorified training run against these guys, but they just want to, here's an opportunity to get some accuracies. And it's interesting that Boa spoke before about the accuracy of the Chiefs' moves, the second man play. I think this is the perfect opportunity to get those moves accurate, but more importantly, I think just get that urgency back up there. But something else I want to see is I just want to see the discipline being really accurate as well. I know a lot of talk about them getting out-muscled against the Springboks, but if you think back to the end of the day, it was really just a lack of accuracy at the breakdown with 30 seconds to go that handed the advantage in field position back to the Springboks.
Pardon me. Yep. The reviewer on YouTube. Look, folks, remember these shows go live to YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can comment on YouTube and Facebook, or you can reply to the tweet on Twitter. Also, you can listen to the show as a podcast to search for New Zealand Sport Radio on your favourite podcatcher. But he makes, we've obviously the Eagles going to this as massive underdogs. He really says the Eagles at least are better than they were back in 2014. Yes and no. Look, they definitely were improving. Got wins over Scotland, for example, over the last few years. But this year have been particularly poor. Look, they went 1-1 with Canada, who have not made it to Rugby World Cup after losing to Chile over two legs. And then they went 1-1 with Uruguay, losing to Uruguay over two legs to not go in as America's won for the first time in a number of Rugby World Cups. So, which means now they have to play off against Chile next year during the July window. So look, they're not at their best. Let's be blunt. They were better probably around 2018-ish. I think probably where they peaked, and have dropped back a bit recently, unfortunately. So we'll they're not as they're not what they were, but they should be on the increase. So Major League Rugby clearly a good sort where all their players are going to have to come from, because it's outside the test window. So players like AJ McGinty, if he was fit, wouldn't be available. For example. So, look, they should be improving, but obviously coronavirus, the Major League Rugby season being impacted by that hasn't obviously helped them with that. So let's go through then and put together our matchday squad. Amongst the hookers then, we've got Amua, Coles, Tekilaho and Cody Taylor. Dane Coles coming back from or joining the squad after some injury. And apparently will be nursing a bit of an ankle as well this weekend. So I definitely think that he needs some time off the bench, is probably how I would start him. But look at perhaps start with Samasoni with Coles off the bench is how I would go. And for those of you on the podcast, I've got lots of nods. So we can probably skip past that one. I'm going to then throw a hospital pass to Boa, because I always forget who's a loose head and who's a tight head. How would you go with the props, sir? Who would you choose?
So, before we jump to the props, we have to start with Tokeaho. We have to unleash the Hulk for 60 minutes. And Nocturnal Rights said we need some direct rugby. That's what he brings to this forward. And I think a couple of good, solid carries where he, busts the line for a good 20, 30 meters and drives some fear back into the opposition, because that's what we lacked in that last game, and that's why we're getting criticized so heavily. So that is very important to start with. Now, coming back to the front rows, I think we have to start building some experience here. So I think I would go with George Bauer to start with at loose head. And I'd like to get Nepo a little bit more game time, because coming back from that knee surgery, he did look a little bit out of sorts, particularly against the boxer. This would be a really good chance for him to get some confidence back. So for me, that would be the starting front row, and get Dane Coles in at 59 minutes.
And the other two reserve props.
Again, I would like to see the two players who haven't had much game time. We're looking at probably Tyrell Lomax to get a little bit of run on form. And again, I'd really like to see Lomax on how he has approached the contact zone, because as you know, he's prone to throw that odd rolling shoulder. And the word from the camp is that he's been working on this technique, trying to get lower and not take someone's chin out. So he's definitely one. And I mean, do we throw Joe Moody in there? Because, we need a little bit of experience. And of course, Joe Moody is a bit short on game time as well. So for me, I think that would probably be the ideal front row mix, first up against the Eagles.
I think somewhere in there they're going to have to. Well, they've taken Ethan de Groot on tour, so maybe an opportunity for a little bit of time off the bench for Ethan de Groot. Some of the boys that have had the heavier workload, I actually think they will rest. I actually think they'll rest Nepo and Joe Moody, and they'll basically, for me, I think they'll pick around the rest of the squad. I think they might even give somebody to me that I think needs more rugby and starting rugby because he hasn't hit his straps is Ofa Tuangafasi. And I'd like to see Ofa Tuangafasi start and on that tight head side with Tyrell Lomax and also Ethan de Groot off the bench for me.
There we go. I'm happy to get to follow your expertise on that one, folks. There was that comment about we're talking about the USA and where they're kind of at. So I just want to share my screen and bring up a graph to show you what their ranking has been over the last few years. And as you can see, they bounce around in the kind of the teens, early teens area. They did get as high as 12th back in 2019, but has slipped back to sort of 16th, 17th currently. So yes, they have slipped back a little bit. As I say, they're not quite their peak of a couple of years ago. But Gary Gold will be aiming to try and get them back up in that direction. Moving on then to the locks, and this is where we could have some real interest. I mean, you've already mentioned Sam Whitelock, folks, and Josh Lord. We also have Breda Italic out there, and Toku Va'ai as well. Also, there has been mentioned that Shannon Frizzell is a lock backup in this one. In some ways, it would be nice to see Lord and Va'ai together. Two players who played together at Taranaki, two players who played together at the Chiefs, but obviously two players who have had, well, one has had no international experience, the other one very little. And Sam Whitelock not had the rugby that he needs. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Sam Whitelock and Va'ai to start with Josh Lord off the bench, is how I probably would go for that one, and perhaps not ask Sam Whitelock to the full 80 and ask him to be replaced. I'll start with Stephen on this one.
I was going to say a message came up. I'm not sure if it was from Simon, but just in and around the 1874 Cup. I was wondering what the 1874 Cup was, so I quickly had to Google, but apparently that was when the first ever game of rugby was played in the United States. It was played between McGill and Harvard University. Don't ask me who won because I wasn't there. So that's what we're playing for.
Even Stephen's not that old. Wow.
Yeah. No, not at all. Listen, just on what you were asking, that for me that they're at least a combination, those two lads, and I think you've got to give them. Some time. I think our two senior locks are going to get a lot of game time. And I think it's best to probably bring somebody like Sam Whitelock off the bench and give him a bit of run, a la Dane Coles. So for me, Tupuvai and Josh Lord, they've got that combination.
I fully agree. I think we'll start with the two youngsters because they'll be raring to go, and fitness is not going to be so much of an issue. And let's get old mate Samuel Whitelock off the bench the last 20 minutes with his old mate Dane Coles, and it's a brilliant combination. And that would manage the minutes, and that's probably how High Performance and the All Blacks coaching staff / selectors would be thinking as well. And also, we got to start building combinations, guys. This tour is probably a really good opportunity to start building depth for maybe the next 8 to 10 years, particularly in positions such as locks, because obviously Samuel Whitelock, in all likelihood, this will probably be his last World Cup coming up. So very, very important that we start building combinations, and let's start with the two youngsters, and then let's get the old mate off the bench.
Yeah, like Sam Whitelock, 33, Brady Retallick's 30, but has had concussion issues. So do wonder how much longer he will go on for. Obviously had that sabbatical in Japan, and apparently is playing better than ever before. So great to see from that point of view. On to the loose forwards then, and wow, there's a lot here to try and choose from. There was an article on Stuff saying which players need to have big games from this game, and they mentioned Dane Coles after coming back from injury. They mentioned Sam Cane. They also mentioned Hoskins Tutu in this one, but also Dalton Papiali'i. And you're kind of like, wow, that's already we've got three. You already mentioned three players there who really could do with game time. You've got Shannon Frizzell just coming back into the squad as well. And I'm sure that Kiriwani, Luke Jacobson would also like to have some game time as well. So, boy, oh boy, look, that's a real difficult one to balance. But it wouldn't be surprised if it's something along the lines of Frizzell at 6, Sam Cane at 7, Hoskins Tutu at 8, with Papiali'i to come off the bench. But is that how you would go, Bell?
No, I don't think. I have to make a point. I don't think Shannon Frizzell is quite ready. His form line has been pretty patchy. So I would actually rule him completely out, at least for the next 2 weeks. What I would like to see is to start with Papiali'i and Jacobson, because I think they need a few minutes, and look at Hoskins Tutu getting some ring time, game time at number 8. And I would look to get Sam Cane off the bench maybe for 20 or maybe 15, because again, look, his form line, I mean, the last game he played was in the Heartland competition. So it's quite a step up from Heartland straight into the Test arena, albeit against the Eagles. It's kind of like, a Group 1 racehorse running against Group 3 horses. So we've got to mix and match this, but at the same time, we have to give preference to make sure that we get some quality minutes. And I think Papiali'i, he hasn't had any minutes because of the injury, and Jacobson's been a bit unlucky with concussion, etc. So two young dynamic loose forwards with some of the younger guys coming in the front fight, I think it'll make for a real dynamite concoction. Like, get some real go forward, good carries, some good offloads, and make sure that they get combinations going. Because again, just jumping from the back row to the front row and locks, there's every chance that we might hear in the future Tokeaho throwing to guys like Josh Lord, throwing to Tupuvai. So it's really important that we get that combination blooding in with guys like Jacobson and Papiali'i.
And look, I mean, Simon Stoney is also a chief as well. So okay, he knows Josh Lord and Va'i already. He's had a whole season with them, or 2 seasons with them. So it's not. So yeah. So that, again, that's another combination there. Okay, Stephen, you've heard 2 sets of back rows that are very different. How would you play this one? Because I think I've a funny feeling this is going to be the one that's been most contentious or most surprising that we might see.
Well, I think something that we can all agree with. I think Sam Cane will come off the bench. I think you can virtually lock that in. I don't think they'll start him. I think they'll ease him off the bench. I think if they start him, I'd be super surprised. My number 8, Hoskins Tutu. He just showed some flashes what he's capable, but we never saw enough of it, and of course didn't quite crack the test side. I agree with Dalton Papali. I think this is an opportunity. I think Ardie Savea is going to have a big workload once we hit Wales, Ireland, France. My 6 I was thinking about, because I just love him as a player, is Ethan Blackadder. But problem is, if you pick Ethan Blackadder, it basically affects the dynamics a wee bit, especially if Hosking Satutu had to leave the field. All of a sudden, you haven't got that specialist 8. You've probably got to put Blackadder in there, and I'd rather see him keep developing in the 6 jersey, which is why I'm not going to put Blackadder in. I'm going to put Jacobson in the number 6 jersey, and that's really to cover the whole back row. You've got 2 7s covering, you've got 2 8s that can cover, and I think if Kane had to go into 7, 6 or 7 at the drop of a hat, it's a lot easier than putting Ethan Blackadder into 6. So that's my 3 just there: Hosking, Satutu, Papali, Jacobson.
Oh, you've got the same way as well. Then I think Sam Kane actually has played 8 before for the Chiefs, but so I think obviously not a regular 8, but I think he has worn that jersey before. Okay, then, folks. So I've been totally outvoted by the other 2, so we'll see who gets it right when it actually gets named. But boys, if you're putting both Sam Whitelock and Sam Kane on the bench, and you're not picking Ardie Savea, who's your captain for in this game? Deathly silence. Stephen's on mute, which doesn't help. So we'll keep picking, but those guys have to think about a captain if they don't start Sam Kane.
Paul. Look, I think in all likelihood they will probably start with Sam Whitelock. That's my gut feeling. But from building depth and looking at managing minutes and getting people into what you call a progressive form line, it's best that these players actually start off the bench. But that, of course, leaves a question mark on who's going to captain. So, be interesting to see. Probably someone in the back division. It might even come down to someone like TJ Perinara.
Yeah. I was about to say, yeah. Got you there, Paul.
If that answers your question, and I know the next question is going to be who's going to be our starting halfback. So let me give the precursor to that very question. I think that gives you the answer. TJ Perinara at 9, and we might see Christie come off the bench in all likelihood.
The other person who could be captain is the other vice captain that was during the Australia tour, which is Beauden Barrett. Now, do you start Beauden Barrett at 10 or Richard Moanga or even Dane McKenzie? How do you where are you going with that one? Richard Moanga obviously just freshly into the squad, having missed all but the last game of the Rugby Championship due to his wife giving birth. So does he come in for game time, or are we saving him for the big games and give Dane McKenzie a shot there?
I think Richie Moanga needs a bit of game time. We only really saw him enter the fray against the Springboks 20 odd minutes to go. I think he needs more game time up his sleeve just to get himself up to speed. I think he'll start.
No question. Start with Moanga, and I would look to get D-Mac off the bench probably last 20, or even we might even not need D-Mac. I think Moanga might get some solid game time. And look, with the opposition he's playing, we can expect some real fireworks. Watch for that kick pass to the corner. There'll be plenty of points leaking on the edge. So we start with Moanga, possibly D-Mac coming off the bench.
Moving on then to the centres, and we could be seeing what do you think about a Quintapaya and Braden Ennor combination in the 10-12 there? 2 players who have seen very little game time. Obviously, Havili, Rico Iwani, and Antoinette Brown, the other players there. But if we're managing time, then surely those 2 have got to be your starting centres.
For me, very real possibility.
Same. I'd love to see Quintapaya actually get full 80 minutes. I'd love to see that, because for me, he's the one true workhorse who's actually done the work, particularly at training. And I thought he's very unlucky to miss out on selection in that second test against the Springboks, because it was a brilliant formula in that last quarter he played. And of course, it was he who made the crucial jackal steal. And I have to say that was one of the only legal jackal steals I've seen in a long time, because both his feet were firmly planted on the ground and he was actually supporting his own body weight. So I'd love to see Tapai get a full 80 minutes with Eno. Look, and I think we probably have to give one of those three out of Rico Ioane, Anton Leonard-Brown, and Havili a bit of rest. Just looking at the stats, Havili in that last game against the Box took 13 full-on body contacts in carries. That is quite that is blunt force trauma, ladies and gentlemen. So I think he needs a bit of a rest. So we might actually see Anton Leonard-Brown be the senior partner coming off the bench. And again, he needs a bit of game time as well, because post-injury, his form line has been hampered as well. So Quinn Tupaea, Braden Eno, and Anton Leonard-Brown probably coming off the bench.
Or nocturnal rights, how about Akira Ioane at 13? But there we go. That's he said that's where he'd like to really play. But that would be an interesting tactical decision to play something like that, but which could be very fun as well. But anyway, so you've already used up all your bench spots, which means for your outside backs, there's going to be no replacements, or Anton Leonard-Brown or Braden Eno would have to slide out there. Your back three, then we've got George Bridge, Will Jordan, Sever Reece, Geordie Barrett, and we've already got Dane McKenzie on the bench. So, Rico also can play out there, obviously. Now, look, Will Jordan got pulled early in that game in the first test against South Africa, when everyone thought George Bridge was having the worst game. Now, that was apparently because he was not playing to the plan and was ignoring or was playing his own style and not actually what the game plan was, which was an interesting one. Does he get this opportunity to save himself, boys, or is he totally on the outer, do you think?
Gee, you ask all the tough questions tonight. Paul, tell you what, I feel very, very sorry for Will Jordan if he didn't enter into a game plan where, if I think back at that game, he had very, very few chances to shine, and probably on most of the occasions he probably got subbed for maybe dropping a couple of high kicks here and there. So it's a tough one. But listen, the kid needs his confidence back. I think we know what some of our other wingers bring to the table, and I personally would play him on the wing. But that's just me.
I think I'll actually see him at fullback, because I think Geordie will be given a rest. And if you're going to put Dane McKenzie on the bench, then I think he's going to go there. But Boa, your thoughts?
Look, Will Jordan, no question. I think we will see the tour's first hat-trick against the Eagles if he starts on that wing, because there's nothing better to get your confidence back than scoring tries, freewheeling on the outside. And this is perfect opportunity.
Oh, God.
No question. Will Jordan will start, and I think George Bridge will start on the other wing. As far as the fullback, I mean, I understand Geordie's had a big workload, but purely on his goal kicking ability and his overall skills, I think we might see at least one half. And again, you don't want to at test level, I have to stress this, you don't want to start a completely green man 15. You need to have some sort of experience. And I think the fullback is a very, very critical position. And of course, look, you have to understand, this is professional sport. The Eagles, they have plenty of resources. People doing analysis I have worked with in the past. So, you're working with some clever people. So they will come up with certain strategies, i.e. utilizing the, 50-22. I think we've got to start Geordie at the back, give him some, at least a half, and then see how things go, and then shuffle around. But George Bridge, Will Jordan, early tip to score the first hat-trick if he starts against the Eagles, and Jordan Barrett at fullback. There you go.
Well, the Oracle has spoken, folks. Straight get down to the TAB as soon as the team is announced.
I know that. I heard a bleep in the background. That was my reminder from my TAB account. Obviously, we're listening in.
Stephen, do you go with that back three?
Actually, I think Bo put it really well. Actually, yeah, I would go with that back three.
We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised to see. Yeah, we'll see if Will Jordan gets on the wing or at fullback. I wouldn't be surprised to see Silver Resource get some game time as well. I can't see Rico Iwani being out there. I think he'll be first choice winger once we get into the bigger games later in the tour. So you go, folks. That's our squad. Clearly, players we're expecting there to need to show themselves are players like Dane Cole, Sam Whitelock, Sam Kane, coming off the bench there as they've not had much rugby recently. Also, players like Dalton Papulehi and Antonette Brown coming back from injury as well with those ones. Also, this weekend we've got Japan versus the Wallabies for this one. Look, Japan have perhaps been a little bit disappointing recently, but obviously fantastic in 2019, but not seen much of them over the last sort of year and a half since then. What kind of Japanese side do you think we're going to see turn up against the Wallabies on Saturday afternoon?
Well, look, it's been a while since the drinks for Japan, so I would expect to see that Jamie Joseph will try and get his best and strongest 15 on the park to start with. And truth be told, based on the form line we've seen from the Wallabies, Japan will start massive underdogs, long odds on to cause an upset. And I in fact saw Dave Rennie make mention. I think it's just giving Japan some due respect that we have to be wary and we need to be watchful. But the reality is, if the Wallabies can bring at least half of that form, which saw them beat the Springboks twice in the championship, I don't think Japan will stand much of a chance. That said, the recent past, the statistical patterns show that every time there is a bit of a break or a bit of a disjoint, the teams seem to just drop off the radar as far as the form line goes. So I'm expecting to see a game which is not probably going to be the prettiest to watch. It's going to be a bit stop-start. There will be a bit of infringing. And I think Japan will look to put a lot of pressure with their line speed, or what you call a blitz defense. So they're bound to give a lot of penalties, in that offside sort of area. And I think the Wallabies will be aware of this, and they will look to kick as many penalty goals as they can. So they'll probably start with Quade Cooper. As far as Japan goes, their lineup, it will be interesting to see who actually makes the grade as far as fitness goes, because obviously Jamie Joseph is one of those guys. He gives emphasis on being fit and ready to start. So a large unknown. It'll be interesting to see who they started, but I sincerely hope that they put their best and strongest available 15 to start with. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very long night for the Japanese.
Yeah, but bit of an interesting one for me. Obviously, that's the first of 4 games for the Japanese. I think they go on play Ireland, Portugal, and Scotland to round out their season. So I think they'll want to start this one reasonably well. I'm just trying to think back to some of the games we saw them play this year. I can recall them playing the British Lions before the British Lions went on their tour, and I actually thought they put in a reasonable effort, but just didn't quite have the accuracy. I think they were a little bit rusty at the time. I think they may have even played the Sunwolves as a warm-up game. They probably needed some more substantial opposition, and then they go on and tour Britain as well. Paul,
they played Ireland 30 and lost 39-31 in that game. Now that's Ireland without their British and Irish Lions players.
Yeah, so listen, what they've shown, they're capable of scoring tries. Whether they'll be able to reproduce a really tangible performance against the Wallabies first up, yeah, I have my doubts, to be quite honest. They'll be up against it, but they're a well coached team. They would have been watching a lot of the rugby championship, and they might have some tricks up their sleeves, but I don't think they'll be good enough. I think this Wallaby team is on the rise.
Yeah, no, I think the Wallabies have only lost one game against sides that aren't the All Blacks under Dave Rennie. I don't expect them to lose this one. So yeah, I think that record is going to probably continue in this game. So yeah, the All Blacks and Ireland and the Wallabies, sorry, for are our picks for this weekend. We'll do our proper picks Thursday or Friday, probably on Friday actually. On Friday's lockdown beers. So do catch us at 5 p.m. on Friday for that. But there's an early sign as to which way we're going to go with that one.
Yeah, Paul. One thing I have to say is just with Brownie being in the coaching staff, Tony Brown, real student of the game, and the way he coaches, he's very tech savvy, and I've sat beside him, watched what he does. He has about 100 screens with all sorts of analysis coming in. If Japan start with their first five, who's Yatamura, look out for a lot of tactical kicking from hand, i.e. the 50-22. And I think that's the sort of tactical nous Tony Brown is going to bring to this Japanese side. And I know he will look to exploit that as much as he can, because, the way this game is going, particularly with the 50-22, albeit an experimental trial law, it has been underutilized. So if there's one guy in World Rugby who I know will really utilize this, it's Tony Brown, because boy, he's got a great bag of tricks when it comes to actually kicking. And of course, Yatamura has been an outstanding tactical kicker for Japan. So that's something, fans, punters out there, I'm going to give you a few subtle hints here. So if Japan can actually win the territorial game, I'm not saying that they go the whole hog to cause a boil over, but I think it's going to be very interesting, and it'll cause a bit murmurs and a bit of tremors in the Wallabies camp and make life very, very difficult for them.
It looks to be a cracking game on Saturday, folks. I think it's 5 something or other is the kick-off from that one. Turner Wrights thinks that the 50-22 is coming more into the NPC games. Slowly but surely players and coaches are getting used to it. There's definitely been a missed opportunity by a bunch of teams to try and catch other teams on the hop before they got used to it. Essentially, is what Boa's really trying to say here on this one. Is that there's definitely been a missed opportunity there with that one. But yes, no, it is slowly coming into it. One of the problems we are having though is as Nocturne Wright says, the referee didn't pick up on it during the Hawke's Bay Canterbury game. We've got the commentators not really understanding the laws either, which doesn't help. It's and as I said at the beginning, it's one more thing we're asking the referees to keep an eye on during the game when they're already having enough to look at. So trying to keep an eye on, did the ball get passed into the half or not? Where was the guy that kicked it? All these extra things I have to look at. I think it's a bad law to be added, but there we go. From that point.
Look, if you ask 100 rugby fans, do you know what a 50-22 is? I'll bet you my bottom dollar, 99.5% of fans won't have a clue. That's the reality, guys. So all that is irrelevant. But what I'm saying is, this is a loophole. A little birdie on the wire tells me that Japan will exploit, and hopefully on game day, the referees know the rule and they correctly award the 50-22.
Listen, I think I'm just going to defend the commentators a little bit. I think sometimes even when you're sort of watching the game, and especially when it's around the halfway mark and a kick goes in, all of a sudden, gee, where was that player standing? Was he on his side of halfway, or was he right on the halfway there? Even sometimes where I see players from inside their 22, and boy, if you look at it closely, it almost looks like their back foot had gone over the 22 in some cases. But I think in the main it does get underutilized, especially if you're in that middle part of the ground, or that 10 meter in between sort of 10 meter mark and halfway, because usually if you've managed to basically set up rucks in the middle of the field and split the defense both ways, it's a great opportunity for somebody, if you've got a right-footed kicker or a left-foot kicker, to recognise where that space is and kick down into that corner. And it doesn't necessarily take a big punt. You just have to basically, you could roll it down into the corner.
I think the other one is also if your 13 can kick a couple of passes out there, that quite often will draw the winger up, and then that opens it up for that as well. So yeah, so there are a number of options there for it. And as Bo says, look out for it on Saturday, 5:45 on Sky Sports 4. As Simon's told us, LB says, "Don't talk to me referees. I've been watching the URC." Now, and on this one, I get where he's coming from. So, folks, what has come to light is the URC don't have a referees manager currently, which is just mind-boggling. That there isn't somebody who is overseeing all the referees, doing post-game reviews with the referees, and that whole process that is supposed to happen and does happen in other competitions. So the URC, have clearly dropped the ball on this one. Their admin has messed up, and the coaches don't even have a referees manager to go to with questions, complaints, comments. So that does need to be fixed. Yes, the URC showing their youthfulness of their organisation, that it's not quite set up right yet. Robson writes, "Is Radley available for the position?" I think he's busy at the moment.
United they stand, divided they fall. But I have to say, maybe next week they can play without referees, and maybe all this complaining will stop. And actually, we might actually have some games which flow. Because I have to say, so far I did watch some URC games. I'm a bit of a rugby nerd. I have to admit they were, pretty drab and pretty boring. There were a few refereeing howlers you'd expect at elite level. These guys would get it. But look, it is what it is. We're seeing a trend. This has been ongoing for the last decade or so. I'm sure all the South African listeners and our Springbok fans and friends will agree with me on this one. But yeah, very unfortunate that there isn't a referee manager for the URC.
Yeah, that's right. But we'll move on quickly from that one, though, and let's have a quick chat about Moana Pasifika, who have been announcing players over the last few days. And we now have 8 players who have been announced. Today, Sukopi Kepu has been added. He'll be one of the non sort of eligible players, as is Christian Leofano. Inari, we think, is eligible. We're not entirely sure. But those are the first, sort of the 3 marquee, or the 3 big names they've mentioned. They've also added Sione Tuipulotu, Solomoni Funakai, Narai Formai, Henry Tuafu, and Tomasi Alasia. Now, the way you read this picture that I put up there, the ones in the light colour, so the names I've just mentioned, are the ones that have been confirmed. The ones in the dark colour are the ones that haven't been confirmed. The ones with green are the ones that Stephen and I have predicted. The ones in red are the ones that we haven't. But these are the ones that have been rumoured recently to have signed there in the dark colours. So EC Tongafasi, for example, Stephen and I didn't predict because we thought he was still contracted with the Crusaders, for example. That is why. So that is that's why we didn't have him down there. But Boa, having seen the signings that they've made and the rumoured names that are up here as well, what are your thoughts on the Moana Pasifika squad so far?
Yeah, look, it's not a bad squad. It's not a bad squad. I have to say, a little bit underwhelmed in certain areas, but again, it comes down to player availability. I'm very happy to see they've signed on Kepu, the ex-Wallaby. I think that's a lot of test experience coming in. I've seen how he trains with the Counties Manuka squad firsthand, and he brings all that experience and influence, and he's a real leader when it comes to guiding some of the younger players. So that's a great signing. Nice to see Jordan Lee there as well, albeit not. Has he been confirmed, Jordan Lee?
No, he hasn't been confirmed. So no, the ones in the darker colour haven't been confirmed at this time.
Sure. And of course, I think Christian Leofano, the real bolter, I think, coming from the Brumbies background, that structure and ability to make, calm decisions at a pivotal position of first five is really good. Everyone else, I think, once the entire squad, then, once everything sort of gets finalized, it'll just be picking and choosing combinations. But overall, I think there's a little bit of ground to catch up for Moana Pasifika as far as experience and true. I mean, they need a few more guys who've had true test experience to actually be competing with some of the top franchises. But look, it's it's taking shape. It's taking shape, and I'm very excited. And what I hope they don't end up doing is with getting some of these players in, trying to play this overly structured or overcoached rugby. I think these guys, you just throw the ball to them, much like the Fijian Drew, and just say, look, guys, let's just go out there, have some fun, and let's score some tries and entertain.
And Stephen, your thoughts on the squad?
Yeah, quite interesting. I see. I wonder if they're going to actually be based down in the Hawke's Bay and they're going to change their names to Moana Pasifika Magpies, because there's about six players I can see from the Hawke's Bay that possibly could end up in the squad. And I'll tell you what, that's some pretty heads-up selections from the coaches involved, because, you talk of Hawke's Bay, they're probably the form team of the 2021 Bunnings NPC at this point in time. So at least they are picking up some guys who are showing quality at this very moment, and that's got to be a good thing. Yeah, listen, it's building nicely. I don't think we can be too underwhelmed, because they're only basically working with what they're actually given. And if you think back to the original squads that we looked at a couple of months back, Paul, you've got to say it's probably better than where we thought. I'm probably thinking they're probably looking at about a 6.5 out of 10 at the moment, in terms of what they actually might end up with. Like it.
Yeah, I mean, when we were predicting the players that would be the non-qualifying players, or the marquee players we want to call them, we said that there would be Skopi Kepu, a scrum half, a fly half, and the other two would be used at lock. Because I think lock is going to be the one area that that we need to see something happening. But it's going to be interesting to see where are those locks going to come from, because the lock at the moment is one of the most sought after positions in world rugby, because physically there are only so many tall people around to be there. So finding a tall person who is also skilled and also has the right work rate takes a lot of effort, or there are less of them. So that to me is going to be the key one. Mike McKee, again, someone that we missed out. And again, he's yet to be confirmed, but he's missed out on on the NPC through injury, but hasn't been Super Rugby level before. So we'll have to see. So LB says, who are the props? Well, so far they've got Skopi Kepu, Jordan Lay, and Skopi Kepu's been confirmed. We've seen rumours online around Jordan Lay and Issa Tongafasi. So all three of those have got Super Rugby experience. Obviously, Skopi Kepu, 110 caps for the Wallabies. Jordan Lay was the Blues last year. Issa Tongafasi was with the Crusaders last year. So three there, ones that all have got, Super Rugby experience. So that's one of their more experienced areas by the looks of what we're expecting them to be able to pick up along the way. So, so far so good. Still a long way to go. And don't forget to join me at 5 p.m. every single day, because so far, whilst Moana Pasifika took Sunday off for church, they have they've released a player or players every single day at 2 p.m. So I'll let you know who they are at 5 p.m. With that news. So do join me for those. I guess the final thing, boys, is that news that came out today was that because of the COVID restrictions and lockdown in Auckland, that the Super City comp that was being talked about between North Harbour, Auckland, and Counties Manukau will not be going ahead, and it is officially now the end of the season for them, unfortunately. So just 2 games for each of those 3 teams this year, which is really sad to see. A whole bunch of players, particularly with Counties Manukau, who are trying to make a case to get Moana Pasifika contracts if they haven't already. But other players, again, who won't be able to develop their game or put their best foot forward, a real shame for those three sides. Any sort of thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, just tragic. It's really, I suppose, for me, it's basically the what I'm going to, sort of like the hypocrisy in a lot of ways. We see a lot of people moving in and out of Auckland, some legal, some illegal, if you know what I mean, some for other means, and it's just a shame that these guys could not have been moved a lot earlier at North Harbour, maybe up to Whangarei, and of course both Auckland and Counties Manukau down to Tauranga. I really feel for these unions, but at the end of the day, players have still got to be paid, from what I understand, and unfortunately, the unions are probably going to have to go back to the government cap in hand, just to keep things ticking over, or they'll be in a whole world of hurt.
Yeah, I mean, unlike the other provinces who are taking part in Bunnings NPC through to the end of through to late November, they will only have to pay the players, you'd imagine, up to the end of October, because obviously they don't have an extended season. So all the provinces are going to have financial issues. Clearly, those three teams have an issue because obviously they'll not be able to host games, and therefore there's been no income from those. The other 11 provinces have all got to find extra cash because the what's the thing? Gone blank, because the tournament is running longer. So, we all just have to financially, unfortunately for these ones. Let's hope that things like the wage subsidies and other things mean that we don't have to see redundancies from the gone blank from the from the provinces, like we saw them have to do a bit last year, or some of the provinces have to do last year as part of that.
Look, Paul, I think that is inevitable. That is, I mean, I have a lot to do with particular community rugby in Auckland. That is inevitable. I mean, to give you an indication of where we are in my club, we are talking about cancelling our Sky subscription because we just don't have the money. We have to let staff go. We were going to hire a full-time general manager, which is going to be funded partly by the union. That's no longer an option. It's not viable. I think it's a very disingenuous sign of hypocrisy, given that we've had so many people moving in and out of the province or provinces. Most of them might add illegally, and yet they've gotten away with it. And yet we have a professional team who've been in a biological bubble, who followed all the protocols. And we, I have to say, the rugby community, we actually go out of our way to make everything stick as far as the procedures go. Now, I can't speak about other people, but as far as my club goes, everyone who comes in there, we comply. It's a simple rule. If you can't comply, there's the road. You're not welcome here. That's just how it works. So I think it's. I had my say in various platforms. I'm not going to repeat most of those things I said, because it'll probably get us in trouble. This is a real slap in the face as far as a professional sport who had some robust systems and processes in place, where we have some people who have put a lot of effort and made a lot of sacrifice to make things happen, tick all the boxes, and yet be denied exemptions is, to me, quite gut-wrenching. And I mean, I know most of these players involved, and they have a career to pursue. They have a livelihood to be made. And, most of these people who have jobs in rugby, they're taking significant pay cuts because all wage subsidies are doing is just a top-up handout. And most people in the business, in the professional part of rugby, they're in professional business not to take handouts from the government. They want to go out there, do their thing in a safe manner, and actually turn a profit. So this is just, there's a lot of confusion, a lot of grey areas. The end result is nothing has happened. It's very unfortunate. Nothing we can do. We just have to pretend that, it is what it is and move on. It's tough. And my heart goes out to each and every one who has been affected. And hopefully, never again do we have to go through this rigmarole.
Yeah, let's hope so not. And so, folks, please do get vaccinated. And well done to all the rugby clubs and community groups in Auckland who have been helping with that vaccination program. I know I'm having seen lots of tweets about that. So well done to them. Look, LB says weird because people are allowed to leave the province for work, but rugby players aren't for work. Well, some players have been allowed to leave for work. For example, Julian Surveyor was allowed to. So single players playing for clubs, playing for provinces, playing for other provinces have been allowed to leave. It is the provinces that are within the group haven't been able to leave en masse. Now, part of that is what do you call it? Maybe a logistics thing. In fact, there's 120 people to do approximately across the three things. I think they could have done it safely. It's a shame, it's a shame they didn't get signed off. But I think that's probably what it is. But some rugby players have been allowed to leave and for work. It's it's not that no rugby players have been allowed to leave on that one. Folks, tomorrow will be the 50th edition of the 5 p.m. Lockdown Beers, our broadcast, which I'll be honest, when the lockdown started, I wasn't expecting it to go that long. I thought it'd go for a couple of weeks and that would be the circuit break and we'll be back again. But no, we are now onto the what do you call it? I've gone blank now. Yeah, the 50th episode of that tomorrow. So do join me at 5 p.m. Tomorrow. Boa, thank you very much for your time. Stephen, thank you very much for your time. And I'm cutting things off there before we get too political, both in our chat and also in the live chat as well. But thank you, folks. Enjoy the rugby that's coming this weekend. Stay safe, get vaccinated, and let's hopefully get back to normal as soon as possible.